The pain started in the back of his jaw, deep where the tooth met the bone, and it did not stop for 3 days. He was a young man, maybe 20 years old, living in a limestone cave in what is now Pakistan, 9,000 years before anyone would write the word dentist. He could not sleep. He could not chew meat without wincing, and yet somehow he survived long enough for archaeologists to dig up his jaw thousands of years later and find something that should not have been possible for a person of his time. A hole drilled with precision straight into the center of a rotting molar. Someone had performed dental surgery on him. In the Stone Age, no metal tools existed yet, no anesthesia, no understanding of bacteria or infection as we know it. And yet the hole in that tooth was almost perfectly round, drilled with what researchers believe was a flint-tipped bow drill, the same tool early humans used to make fire. Someone sat this man down, held his head steady, and bored into a living nerve with a spinning stone point, and he lived through it. That discovery, made in a Neolithic graveyard called Mehrgar, rewrote what we thought we knew about ancient people and their teeth. For a long time, the assumption was simple. Before toothbrushes, before fluoride, before modern dentistry, our ancestors just suffered. Rotting mouths, missing teeth, a grim inevitability of pre-industrial life. But the deeper researchers dig, literally, into ancient skeletons, ancient trash pits, and ancient texts, the more it becomes clear that early humans were not helpless against tooth decay. They fought back in ways that were sometimes brutal, sometimes surprisingly clever, and sometimes centuries ahead of what anyone expected. To understand how strange and inventive this fight really was, you have to go back even further than that cave in Pakistan. You have to go back to a time before agriculture, before cities, before anyone had ever tasted refined sugar or bread. Because here's the part almost nobody realizes. The story of dental hygiene does not begin with civilization. It begins with the diet that came before it. For most of human history, our ancestors ate a coarse, fibrous diet, wild plants, tough meat, nuts, roots pulled straight from the ground. That kind of food is naturally abrasive. It scrapes plaque off teeth just through the act of chewing. Anthropologists studying the teeth of hunter-gatherer populations have found something almost paradoxical. Many of these ancient people had remarkably clean, cavity-free teeth, not because they were brushing, but because their food was doing the work for them. Then agriculture arrived, and everything changed. Around 10,000 years ago, as humans in the Fertile Crescent began farming grain, something started happening to their mouths that had never happened at this scale before. Soft, starchy, sugar-rich foods like bread and porridge began sticking to teeth in a way wild food never had. Bacteria feasted on the residue. Cavities exploded across a population. Skeletal remains from early farming communities show a dramatic spike in tooth decay compared to the hunter-gatherers who came before them. In gaining the ability to feed entire cities, humanity had accidentally invented the cavity epidemic. And that is exactly when the first real evidence of intentional oral care begins to appear. Here is where it gets strange, because the earliest known toothbrush was not a brush at all. It was a stick. Across Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and later the Islamic world, people began chewing on the frayed ends of twigs, softening the fiber until it separated into something resembling bristles, then scrubbing it against their teeth and gums. In parts of the Middle East and South Asia, this tool, called a miswak, was cut from the Salvager persica tree, and it was not just folk tradition. Modern chemical analysis has found that the wood naturally contains antibacterial compounds, along with fluoride-like minerals, tannins, and abrasive silica, essentially a built-in toothpaste growing on a tree branch. People 3,000 years ago had, by trial and error, stumbled onto something dental researchers still study today. Some clinical studies have even compared its antibacterial effectiveness to modern toothbrushes. The ancient Egyptians took things further. Archaeologists have recovered fragments of Egyptian medical papyri describing an actual tooth powder, a mixture that included crushed rock salt, dried iris flowers, pepper, and mint, ground together and used to scrub the teeth. It is, in essence, one of the oldest known toothpaste recipes on Earth, written down more than 1,000 years before the Roman Empire even existed. And it was not just for the wealthy. Excavations of Egyptian mummies across social classes show worn enamel consistent with regular abrasive scrubbing, meaning this was not some royal luxury. Ordinary people were doing it too. But nothing prepares you for what the Romans were doing. Roman writers openly documented using urine, specifically aged, fermented urine as a mouth rinse and teeth whitener. It sounds absurd today, almost like a joke history plays on us, except it was not a joke, and it was not stupidity. Urine contains ammonia, and ammonia is genuinely an effective cleaning agent, one still used in some industrial cleaners today. The Romans had accidentally identified a real chemical whitening agent centuries before anyone understood chemistry. Wealthy Romans reportedly imported urine from Portugal, believing it was more potent, and the writer Catullus even mocked a rival for having suspiciously white teeth, implying exactly how he achieved it. Emperor Nero eventually taxed the urine trade because it had become so commercially significant. Let that sink in. Ancient Rome had a functioning economy built partly around bodily waste as a beauty product. Meanwhile, in ancient Mesopotamia, people believed something entirely different was happening inside of the decaying tooth. Cuneiform tablets over 4,000 years old describe a small worm burrowing into the tooth, feeding on the flesh inside, and causing the pain of a cavity. This idea, the tooth worm, was not confined to Mesopotamia. It appears independently in ancient Chinese, Indian, Egyptian, and later European medical texts, suggesting that across completely disconnected civilizations, people arrived at eerily similar explanations for the same invisible suffering. They were wrong about the worm, but they were not wrong that something was eating the tooth from within. Bacteria do exactly that. They simply lack the microscope to see it. And this is where the story takes its darkest turn. Because if you believed a worm was inside your tooth, the logical solution was extraction, and ancient extraction had no room for mercy. Archaeological and historical records describe tooth removal performed with pliers, forceps, even simple string tied to a door, all without anesthesia. In medieval Europe, this work often fell not to physicians, but to barbers, the same men who cut hair and performed bloodletting, doubling as the closest thing most towns had to a dentist. The red and white stripes on a traditional barber pole are not decoration. They are believed to represent blood and bandages, a leftover symbol from a time when getting a haircut and getting a tooth pulled might happen in the same chair by the same man with the same tools. But even here, amid the brutality, there's evidence of surprising sophistication. That drilled tooth from Mergarth was not a one-off miracle. Researchers examining the site found multiple drilled molars among different skeletons, suggesting this was not an accident or a single desperate experiment, but an established, repeated practice, a kind of prehistoric dental clinic operating nearly 9,000 years ago. Thousands of years before the wheel was even invented in that region. And further evidence keeps surfacing. In 2012, researchers studying a 6,500-year-old jawbone from Slovenia found something even stranger. A cavity that appeared to have been filled, packed with a substance made from beeswax, likely to reduce pain and pressure when chewing. It may be the oldest known dental filling in human history, older than the pyramids, older than written language itself. So why does any of this actually matter now, beyond being a strange historical curiosity? Because it reveals something uncomfortable about human progress. We tend to imagine history as a straight climbing line. Primitive people struggling in the dark, modern people finally seeing the light. But the truth is messier and far more human. Ancient people were not ignorant. They were observant, resourceful, and relentlessly experimental, testing plants, minerals, and even their own bodily waste against a problem that caused them real chronic pain. They did not have germ theory. They did not have anesthesia. What they had was persistence and an unwillingness to simply accept suffering as permanent. And in a strange way, the story is not finished. The World Health Organization estimates that billions of people worldwide today still suffer from untreated tooth decay in an age of fluoride, dental implants, and modern anesthesia. The oldest human struggle on Earth has not disappeared. It has only changed shape. Next time you spit toothpaste into the sink or wince at the sound of a dentist drill, remember that you are participating in a ritual that stretches back 9,000 years, to a stone drill spinning against the living nerve, to a stick chewed soft against aching gums, to a young man in a cave who somehow endured the unimaginable and lived to tell no one except the silence of his own bones, dug up thousands of years later, still holding the evidence of how badly and how fiercely humans have always fought to keep their teeth.